Hi, I'm Dave DeWitt. A few years ago, I wrote a book which is called An Evaluation of the Atheist Religion Known as Evolution. I also wrote a brief overview of that book, and I'm going to cover that overview in 3 podcasts. This is the 3rd one of those podcasts. The next thing I want to talk about is adaptation is not microevolution. Microevolution is a deceptive term that evolution religion imposes on the world to describe adaptation. It's like saying since Santa Claus is real, the Santas at the mall are proof of Santa who also comes down the chimney. There are micro Santas, and hence the micro Santas are proof of a macro Santa. Adaptations through mutations and natural selection are observable in nature and expressed as variations within what the Bible calls kinds of living things, such as different kinds of dogs or cats or horses. The vast amount of genetic information which is in every kind of living thing allows them for variable genetic expression needed to survive changing environments. But that genetic information only allows variation within its kind. There's no observation whatsoever that it adds information allowing movement to a different kind of a living thing, like, say, from a frog to an alligator. That's because all genetic variations only use genetic information already in the creature. It must be understood that there has never been any observation of any new genetic information produced in any creature by random mutations in nature. And all of evolution depends on that. The next thing I want to point out is the conditions of the earth and the universe eliminate evolution. The reason for this chapter is that some evolutionists, realizing that the chances of life evolving from non-living chemicals is absurd, punt to life coming from outer space, somewhere else in the universe. They want us to believe that pushing the problem out to an undeterminable remote place in the universe somehow solves the problem. Right now there are planets crashing into their stars, unattached planets crashing into other planets, shock waves of thousands of degrees traveling through the universe, stars ending up eating one another, comets crashing into planets, black holes sucking in everything in their path, whole galaxies colliding into each other, and supernovas destroying entire galaxies. The universe appears to be a huge place full of spectacular destruction. Planets do not support life. When it comes to planets, astronomers have observed 3 kinds of planetary orbits. A few with approximately circular orbits, so close to a star that they're burning hot, a few with circular orbits so far from the star they're freezing cold, and in most cases, elliptical orbits that freeze when they're from their star and burn when they're close, none of which could support life. The reason life is never found on other planets is because planets are not things that support life. If you had a spaceship that could take you anywhere in the universe, we have found that there's no place in the universe that you could step out of that spaceship and survive, except here. The Earth is uniquely stable. Even with the summer and winter seasons established after Noah's flood in Genesis 8, the Earth is stable and consistent. The Earth is described by astronomers as an oasis of tranquility in a universe of chaos and destruction. In my reading on the subject, and I don't recall the source, I came across an evolutionary astronomer who said, "We hit the orbital jackpot, we get a gentle ride." Another evolutionary astronomer said, "What's so amazing about the Earth's orbit around the sun is not only that it's inevitable, but it had to be stable for 1 billion years for life to evolve on it. And I would add, yeah, or God created it that way. No astronomer has been able to find anything anywhere close to our Earth, anywhere in the universe. The idea that although planets have never been observed supporting life, some beings from some planets millions of light years away somehow traveled all that hostile space for millions of years to visit Earth, or some asteroid with some form of life clinging to it hung on for millions of light years and then was not burned up entering our atmosphere is nothing less than absurd. The Earth is completely unique. Human life requires physical constraints, laws, and properties that fall within certain narrow ranges. If the Earth were 2% closer or further away from the sun, no life would be possible. If the Earth rotated any slower than it does, the day-night temperatures would differ too greatly. If it rotated faster, then the violent winds would be too great. Oxygen compromises 21% of the Earth's atmosphere. If it were 15%, humans would suffocate. If it were 25%, the spontaneous fires would break out. And it's been estimated that we can draw the conditions that a fewer than a trillionth of a trillionth are a percent of all the stars that would be capable of sustaining advanced life. Considering that the observable universe contains less than 1 trillion galaxies, each averaging 100 trillion stars, we can see that not even one planet would be expected by natural chance alone to possess the necessary conditions to sustain life. Next, I want to say a few things about the man-made geologic columns. Geologic columns do not define the dating of rock strata. Here's some basic problems with the geologic columns. One, geologic column is imposed on, not observed in the real world of strata. Charles Lyell, the early mid-1800s, was primarily responsible for giving the world the idea of geologic columns. Each rock layer was given a name and an age and an index fossil. Well, Morris and Parker make the following observation. There's only one place in all the world to see standard geologic columns, and that's in a textbook. The real world strata and the fossils they contain do not use long ages. By the late 1800s, without any scientific process whatsoever, dates were assigned to fossils in certain layers that were then used to date rock layers from one region of the Earth to the other. But as Dr. Kent Hovind casually points out, they just picked those numbers out of the clear blue sky. Third, strata laid down slowly over millions of years would not be bent, buckled, and torn apart. If layers were laid down gradually, we would expect to find thick, smooth layers globally, but we don't. Often rock layers are buckled up, inverted, folded over, and inserted into each other. Any glimpse at a map of the ocean floors will tell you that the continents were once together and torn apart to their present position. Creatures that die slowly over millions of years do not become fossilized. If you take a walk through the forest, you will not obtain a bunch of dead animals waiting around to become fossils. Where are all the transitional fossils? The fossils of those transitional creatures could be observed in the Earth's strata. The reality is none of them are there. The development of well-defined rock layers do not require millions of years. Probably the most obvious example of this is in the natural world is the explosion of Mount St. Helens on May 18th of 1980. I want to point out that some common sense eliminates evolution. The impossibility of an old age. If our current Earth existed for millions of years, here's what would happen. The oceans would be as salty as the Dead Sea. No sea life would survive. Our silt coming out of the major rivers would fill the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean Sea. Trees rotting over millions of years would make the alluvial soil in the tropical rainforest hundreds of meters thick instead of the relatively thin layers we observe today, and there would be no danger of erosion as there is today. The Earth would be filled with meteorites. The strata of the Earth would be packed with fossils. The moon would be covered with dust meters thick, and so would Mars. The Earth would be impossibly overpopulated with humans, not to mention all the pre-human Neanderthal-like beings and their relatives, theoretically more able to survive than the apes. In evolution religion, nobody plus nothing equals everything. If we apply our observation instead of the unobservable leap of faith used by the evolution religion, the cause and effect we observe in the universe tells us there has to be at least a personal, with a intellect, emotion, and will, a moral, with a sense of right and wrong, a just, dictating the absolute standard, purposeful, with a destiny in mind, creator, a personal, moral, just, purposeful creator. Many leaky buckets hold no more water than one leaky bucket. If in the mind of the average college student the evidence for evolution is overwhelming, but every attempt to observe the claim of evolution comes from absurd conclusions with zero evidence, based on zero observations in a real, unrealistic world. To put it mathematically, 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 0. The chances of life evolving on every planet you would look at would be 0. Add them up, you get 0. Complexity requires complexity. The religious idea that mutations account for complexity we see in our world is negated by the reality of the interdependence of parts. The point is simply that, and obvious, all the parts of the biological organism, like the human eye or the structure of the neck of a giraffe, have to be functioning perfectly or the organism is perfectly useless. To support one part would evolve, then wait around for 1,000,000 years for another part to evolve is absurd. The last thing I want to say here is that evolution is a bad accident. If it happened, it's a bad accident. There are atheists and evolutionists that say there's no God because of all the extreme suffering in the world. The argument goes something like this. Number one, if there was a good God, he would not create a world full of suffering. Number two, we have a world full of extreme suffering. Number three, therefore either God does not exist or God is bad. Well, if evolution is the source of all life, then why is that not also true of evolution? Number one, if evolution were good, it would evolve a world without extreme suffering. Number two, we do have a world full of extreme suffering. And number three, therefore either evolution does not exist or it's bad. If you like the extreme suffering of the world and you believe in evolution, then the only possible conclusion is evolution is a bad accident. Well, thank you for listening. This is the third of my 3 podcasts on the subject of evolution. The other 2 in the paper that they're taken from are available on our website, relationalconcepts.org.